evening. Welcome to The Leader's Edge, Season 5, Episode 2. Tonight, we will be discussing a topic of great import, especially because of what's been happening around the world and in our country. Our topic for tonight is mental wellness. As you probably can sense, stress can get really overwhelming, especially for professionals who try to do their best to balance family life and work. Certainly aggravated by major crises such as this pandemic, prolonged stress can lead to serious health issues and strained relationships. In the talk of our speaker tonight, she hopes to inspire men and women to take charge of their lives and believe in themselves by sharing practical tips on how to manage internal and external stressors, develop resilience along the way, and practice self care as the foundation for mental health. Let me describe our guest for tonight. Tinette R. Cortes, or Tinette to her friends, graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Arts, major in psychology from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. Tinette is an international speaker, personal development mentor, and training consultant. She fosters transformation for personal and organizational excellence. She coaches and inspires high level executives, entrepreneurs, and self employed professionals from over, check this out, 30 countries. Now, she does this to help them perform competitively in the global business landscape. She is the founder and CEO of ConsultAsia Global, a training and development consulting firm with headquarters in London and representative offices in the Philippines, Canada, and Australia. Currently, she actively supports various charitable institutions with her personal mission to educate, equip, and empower the less privileged solo parents and children to live better lives. So it is with great pleasure and honor that I introduce to you our speaker, our guest for tonight, Tinette Cortes. Tinette?
Good afternoon, Dino. Hello. Thank you so much for having me here in your show. It's an absolute privilege to be here and to converse with you about this very important topic. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Tinette. As our viewers may have surmised, in our last few episodes, we have been on a serendipitous series of shows that focuses on the mental wellness of people. We had Edward Muziak last week talking about anxiety and depression in the workplace. So maybe, Tinette, I'd like to begin with, could you help us see the big picture first? Like maybe you could paint us a landscape of what's going on right now from your observations.
Okay, thank you for that question, Dino. In fact, because of the pandemic and how people actually had to change their lifestyles and their work habits, a lot of people now are working from home where they were actually very used to going to the office every single day, having their own routines, and then going home at night and also having their family routines. And then all of a sudden, people are now thrown into this unfamiliar territory. And in fact, as you've mentioned earlier, it causes strained relationships, a lot of health problems, because people don't know how to navigate through this whole, this situation. And so a lot of men and women are now suffering from, as you've mentioned, depression and anxiety. And I'm here to just share with you, some of my own my personal stories on how I was able also to cope in this very challenging situation. And I personally have experienced not being mentally well. I was burned out. I was anxious. I was also very irritable with people I love. And now, thankfully, after I've discovered some of these practical techniques, then definitely I'm hoping that a lot of people will benefit from them. So,
I'm so pleased that you are so transparent and so willing to be vulnerable. Far too often, sometimes we try to project the best part of ourselves, and I'm sure you've noticed that on Facebook, we only ever see the good stuff. Yeah. Like nobody likes to talk about their problems or to describe the challenges that they're facing.
yes.
Um, but you've got me curious because as I've always felt in church when I used to be very active in church ministry for counseling, for example, I've always felt that a former alcoholic it would be a great counselor for somebody struggling with alcoholism in the same way that a former smoker would be a great counselor for somebody who is struggling with nicotine addiction. Um, so everyone really has their share of scars and wounds, no, that they carry around. And although a lot of people smile and they look so normal, many of them are walking wounded, as we would like to say. Um, so I'm curious, could you, if you don't mind so much, tell us a little bit about your struggle and how did you overcome it? Because I'm really curious. It could be inspiring, so maybe our viewers can learn from it.
Yes, sure, Dino. To give you a little background, I'm a single mom. So, of course, I was actually in a marriage before, but 17 years ago, I started my journey as a single mother. And, if I may share in this platform, and I'm not ashamed to share it, I encountered domestic violence. And this is what caused me to be more anxious about life. There was so much trauma, there was so much pain, so much fear, and I was living in fear for so long. And one thing about that, one big lesson that I learned from that experience is that it is not really what happens to you that matters, but it's how you respond to those painful circumstances that will really spell the difference between somebody who's a victim and somebody who's a victor for the rest of his or her life. And I chose the path of being a victor because I was already struggling with a lot of anxiety. I was experiencing panic attacks. I was being rushed to the emergency room of hospitals here and there for no absolute reason. When I experience a panic attack, it's almost like you want to throw up and to collapse, and you've got this racing heartbeat and sweaty palms. I experienced that. I experienced my arms, my hands are so tight I couldn't move them, and I thought I was gonna die. So when I was brought to the hospital several times, the doctors would always tell me, nothing is wrong, your vital signs are okay, you're just very stressed. So I realized that mental wellness is not supposed to be something that we try to achieve. It has to be part of our daily lifestyle already. And being a single mom is not easy. Having to, as you've mentioned in my introduction, having to lead a global organization is not easy. And being in the middle of the pandemic is also not easy. So I took it upon myself over the years to learn some practical techniques on how to cope with stress, even before it hits you. Uh, whether it's internal or external stress, it's very important that you have your personal coping mechanisms, your personal bits of, tools that you could use to avoid getting into that really scary zone, because it's not a happy place to be. It's not nice to be anxious all the time. In fact, if I may share with you, there was one time I couldn't even drive. I had to stop driving for 3 months because I always felt like if I was behind the steering wheel, that I was going to die, that I was going to meet an accident. Yes, it was that bad, Dino. Yes, it was that bad. I also stopped wearing high heels. Can you imagine? Because I felt like if I wore high heels, I would fall. So that's how bad the anxiety was. And so, of course, in this conversation, I'm happy to share how I was able to overcome these terrible and debilitating situations in my life.
I'd like to talk to our viewers and reassure everybody that if you've gone through something that's similar to what Tinette has gone through, please, the last thing that you do is to try to sweep that under the rug or to pretend that it doesn't happen. Believe it or not, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is far more common than many of us would care to admit. Uh, being with our guest tonight, I'd really gladly share that as an 11-year-old boy, I was witness to my mom and my dad fighting.
Mm.
Uh, my dad was into boxing. My mom was into furniture. So my sister and I saw that almost on a daily basis. And it's only through God's grace that He gave mom the wisdom to leave this violent man who was my father and move us out of that environment. She moved to Manila
Wow.
and became a single parent herself. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and you know, I am sure there's so many out there of our viewers who have experienced similar um, happenings in their lives. And I totally understand what you're saying because at 21, I also experienced rushing to Polymedic Medical Center
Mm.
where my hand refused to open.
Oh, same.
Tapos naging blue lips ako,
Yes.
parang kulang sa oxygen. And
Uh-huh.
I had tachycardia, you know, that runaway heartbeat.
Yes.
You were talking.
Exactly the
It just
same.
rang, the same things rang in my memory because the doctor said, anak, huwag ka patakot, hindi ka mamamatay dito.
Yes.
And then the dude injected me with a sedative
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
you know, gave me some oxygen. And
Yes.
an hour or so later, I calmed down.
Mm.
But you
Exactly.
know, after that, I had to go through some serious counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you to my doctors who helped me through it, you know, who helped me to
Yes.
process what I had gone through. Um, I'm more, I would like to say I'm more mature now, and I'm able to help other people because I can spot the signs because I
Yes.
experienced it myself.
Exactly.
So back to you, Tinette. Your journey, you know, who helped you? How did you get past being in that cycle of fear and anxiety? Oh, by the way, as you described the high heels and the driving thing, I said
Yes.
to myself, "Oh man, it can hit us really hard." What
Absolutely.
helped you? What helped you get past that?
Okay. Okay. So I just like what you mentioned earlier, everybody tends to just show the good things in life. And I realized that doing that was causing me more anxiety. It was only the time when I decided to speak out, to seek help. And when I say seek help, Dino, it's professional help. Just like you, I had to go through counseling. I wasn't scared. I felt that there was a stigma about seeking counsel from a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I just surrendered myself to that moment when I said, I want to get out of this. So, of course, for a long time, I was keeping it to myself. I was trying to be strong. I was trying to be happy around my friends and family, but it was causing me more and more stress internally. So, and of course, as a leader in my organization, I also had to wear that hat of being a strong figure, and I'd go to bed at night really drained, tired, and lost and confused. And so what helped me was, of course, seek professional help, seek help from the right people. You don't, good thing I never really resorted to harmful things. Like I never tried to hurt myself or harm myself, but it was really more like seeking the counsel of people who have been through the same journey as I have, and from professionals. So I'm not ashamed to share that I went through a series of counseling sessions with a psychologist, and she helped me identify the cycle that I was in. And that was only the time when I started listing down, what do I need to do? So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of my life, I had to pivot. I had to change. I stopped drinking a lot of soda and a lot of caffeine, a lot of coffee. So of course I love coffee, but I try to stay with the decaf, the decaf type or kind. And then of course yoga has helped me a lot. I do practice yoga now every single day, even for only 15 minutes. Just a moment of silence, deep breathing, and then stretching, and just honoring God and the universe for the life that I have at the moment. So these little things done daily over time have helped me develop I call it psychological vigor, because it helped me mentally become more resilient, more accepting, and courageous to face my imperfections. Because I have the tendency to be a perfectionist, and this is what's
Oh,
causing me anxiety as well. so, so that's it, Dino, and a lot of other things, of course, surrounding yourself with people who are genuine and not just, people. I try not to be around people that want to impress me or want to be impressed by me. I no longer have the energy to be around the people. So I try to limit my inner circle to people that I love, people who respect me, and vice versa. So there's a lot of adjustment that I had to do myself. Um, and one thing that I really want to share with our viewers now is that we really have that capacity within us. There's a lot of other tools that we can use externally, but at the end of the day, it's within us. If we just look deeper into ourselves, we will be able to draw that strength from within. So
yeah, so if I could so far put together the beads of what you were saying, so it means that you took a holistic approach to recovery. Like first there
yes.
was professional help,
Mhm.
counseling, and then you also took care to nurture your faith, your trust in the Almighty, and then you took up yoga to help you to focus, to recenter
Mhm.
yourself, and
Yes.
then you surrounded yourself with genuine people. You limited who you were associating with, because as you know, we are who we hang out with. they,
Exactly.
they
That's
can
true.
influence us. Broadly speaking, how bad do you think this pandemic, this new normal, has hit
Mhm.
our country
Mhm.
and the world in terms of people becoming more depressed, more isolated? In your mind, how bad is it?
I would say, Dino, that it's really bad because people respond to the pandemic or to the global crisis uh, in two ways. One is that they isolate themselves,
Right.
or the other one is they tend to be more aggressive towards others. So either way um, is a sign that we are not mentally well. Okay, we tend to withdraw from our usual habits, from our usual activities, or from the people that we love. We lock ourselves up in the room. We don't want to interact we get through these Zoom fatigue sometimes, and people don't want to interact anymore. So this is also not good because we don't know what this person is thinking, whereas there's the other type who would be more aggressive towards his or her children or spouse, or office mates, and towards everybody. So yes, it's been really a bad uh, issue that we are going through. It's a real problem right now, and unfortunately, in the Philippines, it is not very common to seek professional help because there's still that stigma that psychologists or psychiatrists are, for the people who are really mentally challenged at the highest level. But that's not necessarily true. And
That
I
is
also,
true.
yeah, and I also want to point out one of our cultural tendencies here in the Philippines. In Tagalog, right? They would say, "Tawanan mo na lang yung problema mo." And I feel that this is really toxic positivity because yes, you can fake it, but how long can you fake it for?
Yeah.
At some point you'll really just have to admit to yourself that I'm going through some mental illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, whatever it is. It's very important to acknowledge it, seek help, be able to label it, and then find treatment for it. Now, I'm not here to give any advice as to what treatment is best, but definitely you cannot stay in that zone for too long because, again, it can cause issues not only with yourself but also with the people around you. So
So what I'm getting from you is it's important for people to reach out, uh, and certainly to reach out to people they trust. People who have their best interests in mind, which offhand would probably be their family members or
yes.
their best friends. Uh, could you please comment on some things that have been percolating in my mind because I've been observing it, and it's really odd that this is happening. Like, you know that there are still some people who are saying na, ay, hindi totoo yung COVID na yan. Gawa-gawa lang yan. Like, and then, uh,
Yes.
um, sometimes I'm hard pressed to refute them because here in my village, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a federation, and uh, that's a total of 12 different faces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The ones who are getting sick are from the gated communities, and for by God's grace, the mission colonies or the places where the non-traditional residents are have very few cases. And so
Mm-hmm.
what's going on here? Is that denial? Is that a form of trying to be brave when in
Mm-hmm.
reality they're scared stiff?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Okay. Well, the way I look at it, Dino, is that so again, COVID-19, the pandemic, can be seen as a medical issue. It can be seen as a biological issue, but I personally see it as a social pandemic. It is a social issue because whatever it is, whether it's real or not, whether it's medically proven or not, we all see the effect in the
Yes.
social scheme of things. We see how people are behaving towards each other. People are scared. Just the mere fact that we have to isolate ourselves, keep the social distance, limit interactions, this alone in itself is already a pandemic. It's not just a medical pandemic or a biological issue, it's a social issue. And this is what's causing the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the frustration. So I'm not here to refute or to accept the existence of COVID-19 because I'm not really the best person to attest to that. But I see people scared. They don't want to go out of the house anymore. Nobody wants to go back to the office anymore. Or, in public places, people are scared to come close to you. And people are always, OC about everything. And that alone is already a
So
that alone is already a source of mental illness.
Indeed.
So can you imagine the kids?
Yeah. Oh,
We were
before we
kids, we're
go
probably
there,
out in the playground, the streets playing. So
so before we go there, Tinette, I just wanted to get your take as well on another phenomena because oftentimes wives would come to me, of my friends in the village. Dino, can you please convince my husband to get himself vaccinated? He's just so scared to get his shots. He doesn't trust any of it.
mhm,
And they'll say, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know how to convince him because I've
mhm,
had myself vaccinated twice already. But
mhm,
he simply won't go out to get it done.
mhm.
Um, Again, I understand your dilemma because physical medicine is not your specialty. So I get it. But you do have a unique perspective because, as you noted, there is a social pandemic going on as well. Would this fear of vaccination be part of that social pandemic?
Absolutely. It's fear, it's skepticism, it's pride. I mean, it's a lot of different things, Dino. Some people I know don't want to get vaccinated because they want to prove that the government is wrong. or or that the doctors are wrong, the medical experts are wrong. It's really out of pride, yes. Some people don't want to get vaccinated because they're just scared. They don't know what it is and they might die. So again, it's, as I've mentioned, it's a social pandemic towards a medical issue. So that's how I see it. And the vaccine, whether it's traveling, whether it's going out for dinner in a restaurant, if people don't want to do it, it's only caused by one thing: fear. And fear is always there because it can be a biological thing that their bodies are just not ready to get out of their comfort zone, right? So anything new, anything that's different, or anything that gets in the way of their routine is a definite no for them. So so that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Tinette. Now I'd like to, if you don't mind, steer the discussion over to something closer to our home. Because if there's one set of people that has really borne the brunt of this more than the rest of us, because as adults, you and I, we can go out and make necessary purchases. That's what they call it, even during a quarantine. So no matter how briefly, we can at least go out into the sunshine, buy some groceries or those unbelievable rolls of toilet paper and bring them home. But one group of people, ever since this whole thing has started, has in effect been under house arrest, and that's our children.
Right.
Uh, could you comment on what can we do to help our, granted that they're resilient because they're still young, but they're essentially losing the best years of their life. Their childhood is just being stolen from them. How can we help? As parents, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I suppose you have kids as well.
Yes.
What can
Yes.
we do to help them?
Okay. So I have an 18-year-old now, so she's a little older than than your child, Dino. But one thing that I would advise parents who have younger kids in the midst of the pandemic is not to talk about negative things in front of them, because I am aware of couples or parents who make comments about this COVID-19 and the pandemic, the fear and all that. It's only going to magnify and amplify the fear within the child. So it's good to talk about it in a more matter of fact way instead of something that's very subjective, because again, the world in itself is already in a big mess right now. And if we create an even messier home, then poor kids, right? So definitely having a routine helps if it's possible to note down what are the things that are going to happen in that household for the day. So for example, 7 a.m. breakfast time for the family. Okay, 11 a.m. lunch, something like that. And then there's playtime. There's, in my case, because I have a teenager, I let her communicate with her friends as much as possible because she is a very, I wouldn't say shy, but she's really more of an introvert than an extrovert. So if I don't encourage her to communicate with friends, then all the more that she's going to lock herself up. um, it's also what I do is also try to do some physical activities with her. For example, we do dancing together, or we do karaoke together at home. I have a guitar here, so we jam together. But it's important to respect the time of our kids as well. They need to have their me time as well, where they can just read a book, or just do whatever they want. But there also has to be time for the parents and the kids together. What else? Yeah, for younger children, I think it's very important to communicate with them all the time and not build bigger walls, right? We need to have longer tables so that we can communicate with more members of the family, rather than closing the rooms and letting kids do their own thing for the rest of the day. So yes, having a routine, asking them how they are, listening to them, I think is the most important thing right now, because kids don't know, they cannot process what's happening, they
Fair.
cannot.
Mm.
So it's very
I
important
suppose
for the parents. Sorry,
I
Tino?
suppose one way to validate what you're sharing is that I remember that most of our grandparents don't really talk about the Second World War or what
Mhm.
they had to do to survive during the Japanese occupation.
Yes.
I remember when I tried to probe my grandfather, God rest his soul, as a 7-year-old boy, when I kept asking him, "What, Lolo, what was it like for you during the war?" And he would just smile at me and just say, "Help me continue removing the corn from the husks so I can feed my chickens for the sabo." And so he never really wanted to talk about it because you do have a point. I was too young to process
Yes.
any stories that he may have had,
Mhm.
things he may have had to do to help his family survive. So
Exactly.
those are
Yes.
wise words. Yeah.
Yes. And
Uh,
Dino, if I may also add, children actually do not listen too much to what we say, but they watch us with what we do. So I also want to emphasize the fact that parents should try to minimize chatter, on giving sermons, because it didn't work for me, to be honest. I tried to be chattering too much with my daughter, but all she does is, "Oh, mama, that's too much information. I don't want to hear it." But what she does is she actually observes me. She watches how I make decisions, how I talk to my friends on the phone, how what my habits are. So if I don't tidy up my bed, she's not going to tidy up her bed. If I don't wash my own plate, she's not going to wash her own plate. So it's very important that during the pandemic, everything is amplified and magnified in the house. So we got to be careful with what we're doing. So when she sees me, I'm in a Zoom call like this, then she'll start observing me how I am with people I talk, and then I find her talking to her friends in the same manner. She starts sounding so professional with her friends, and I'm like, okay, you're talking to your friends, you don't have to be too professional. So yeah, so that's one thing that I would like to share to parents who are probably watching us right now.
should parents also kind of like learn to trust their kids a little bit more, because we're so concerned about bullying on social media, or we're so concerned about who are their friends, who are they talking to now.
Sure.
And you know how it is, even small children will have a Facebook account and you never know who they're going to run into.
Yes.
Um, and because we both have daughters, I'm like the helicopter parent, always fussing about. Okay, so who's your friend now? Like,
Right, right.
uh, should we respect their privacy in that sense? And if I get what you're saying is, just be there ready to offer
Mhm.
advice if it's asked.
Okay, right. It will really depend on the age of the child because in your case, she's 12, mine's 18. So the level of control, because I would put two functions in play at play here: control and communication. So the level of control, if it's higher, let's say at 12, you'll have to have more control. And I get where you're coming from. If you're being a helicopter parent at 12, that's absolutely fine. But then, of course, you have to, again, listen to what their answers are instead of just judging them. In my case, I have less control right now because the more I control, the more she will try not to communicate with me. So it's different. When she was younger, when I was controlling her, the higher the control, the higher the communication. When she was younger, because when I'm controlling, she will just talk. If I ask her, "Who is your friend? Who are you talking to?" "Oh, mama, it's like this, it's like that." So she answers. But at 18, if I start doing that, she's gonna give me a raised eyebrow and say, "Why do you want to know?" So it's like, "Oops, sorry." But then if I don't ask, what I try to do, Dino, is I try to share my own story. So I try to communicate with her in a different manner. So I'll say something like, "Oh, today I just had a chat with this person," and then I'll share my story, and I'll go, "What about you? How was your day?" And she'll go, "Oh, I was chatting with this person," and then she starts opening up. So instead of me being that helicopter parent at 18, I'm trying to be the cooperative parent because now we're sort of like exchanging stories as friends, but still being careful as to, at 18, she's still with me. She lives with me, even if she's already a young adult. But it's very important for me to still have a hold on things like rules at home, respect is very important, trust. Um, and at 12, I think it's still very, very manageable. You can still instill a lot of values and a lot of um, lessons in your child's mind at that age. I wish my daughter was 12 again, right? So I can
I
still.
know. It's like enjoy them while they're still young.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Time flies so fast.
Yes, it
It's
does.
fine. It flies.
She's
So,
almost as tall as I am now. And she's only 12.
yes.
Um, Jeanette, because so far this pandemic has lasted more than a year already. But the good news is it seems that many of us have learned to pivot already. Like I'm sure in your business, in your consultancy, uh, you've gotten so used to Zoom that it's become ubiquitous with almost every meeting that you go through. And so
Yeah.
we're adjusting. Would you say that there is hope for the future? And as parents, maybe we can communicate this to our kids, not to lose hope. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I love that word, hope, because for me, there is nothing in this world that was given to us that we cannot take responsibility for. So even if we feel that this pandemic has brought about so much chaos, so much confusion and fear, I still believe that there are things in our lives that we can control and we need to focus on that. So what are these things? Number one, our thoughts. Really, we can control the way we think. We
Yeah.
cannot control what the world's going to do with the pandemic, but we can control how we see things. So yes, definitely there's hope. We need to teach our kids how to shift their mindset from desperation or hopelessness to hopefulness. And again, it's with us, with the parents, the way we speak, our life script. Sometimes parents tend to be so negative that children are actually able to adapt it easily. So instead of being so skeptical or very negative about the world, yes, it's a mindset actually. So um, your question, whether there's hope, absolutely, definitely. Again, asking me why I say that, it doesn't matter. It's not a rational statement. It is a, it's a spiritual statement. When you say that there's hope in the middle of this all, it's not based on facts and figures, because that's going to drive me nuts if I'm always going to look at the statistics. Oh, the numbers are rising, so there's no hope. Oh, there's less vaccine, so there's no hope. If that's going to be my way of life every day, Dino, I will never be mentally well, right? So I've learned to focus on the way I see the world and the way I think, my thoughts. I entertain thoughts that I want to stay in my head. As they say, don't let unwanted thoughts occupy your brain rent free. So, as much as possible, try to shift the mindset and have that attitude of hope. So, whatever circumstances come along our way, our mindset will not change. So,
Indeed. It sounds a lot like what Dr. Dennis Waitley used to say when he was here in the Philippines and we were interacting with him. He said, the body always goes in the direction of the currently dominant thought. So if your dominant thought is one of hopefulness, then your behavior reflects that. If your dominant thought is one of anxiety, then your body pays for it. Things like insomnia, things like loss of appetite, things like getting cranky or even road rage. Uh, all of
exactly.
that will just follow. Um, I think of so many of our friends and relatives, even some of our viewers right now here in the Philippines and around the world, who may have things like bedridden old folks that they're looking after. I have a friend who has a wife who's been suffering from cancer for such a long time, looking after her, and his business has taken a big hit. But you know what? I admire the dude so much because every time I do get to talk to him, he's so hopeful, he's so optimistic. God
Yes.
bless his soul because he loves his wife so much. Uh, he's decided that he will maintain that hopeful mindset
Yes.
because he also has his daughter, who's of course looking at how he's reacting to that
Exactly.
situation. Mm.
Exactly, Dino, because circumstances are not going to change, but we can always change the way we see our circumstances. So, again, it will just wear us out and make us so burned out if we continue to change the circumstances, especially if we don't have control over them. So, to stay mentally well, we really need to control our own thoughts, our own feelings. The feelings are actually just a result of our thoughts. So, if I ask you now, Dino, to think of a very sour lemon being squeezed on your tongue, automatically you're going to make a funny facial expression, right?
Yeah, right.
See,
You recoil.
but there's no lemon right now in your tongue, right? It's just a thought that elicited that kind of emotion. So same thing with life. If you keep thinking, oh, this is so bad. Oh, the government is not, doing its job. Oh, then these thoughts are going to elicit the same bodily reactions and feelings, which can cause a lot of stress, and then eventually will cause tumors to grow, a lot of sicknesses, because these kinds of illnesses are actually just a combination of repressed emotions if you're not able to express it, or if you're constantly feeding your body with, or your mind with, negative thoughts.
I can see how, for example, your discipline in psychology and say other sources of hope, such as the church, and people's faith really work together, could truly dovetail, because um, in matters that we cannot see, especially the future, uh, we need to acknowledge that our lives are not in our control at all. And
Exactly.
yet, if we can't do anything about the future, we can do something about the present. And
Absolutely.
beautifully enough, what you're saying is aligned with, say, what our pastors, what our priests, what our mullahs might say. Uh, it's an ecumenical message, meaning never lose hope. Uh,
Absolutely.
there's a bright side to all of this, I think, in that well, I can't say that there's less traffic now. That may have been true during the early part of the pandemic, but it's back. Traffic is back. What I'd say is I love the fact that, for example, when we line up for stuff at pharmacies or the grocery, there's no more pushing and nudging about,
Yes,
or because there's physical distancing,
that's right.
uh, and the air is cleaner
Mm,
somehow.
right.
Butterflies are back, so there's so much to be grateful for despite the adversities that we're in.
That's true.
I'm sure you've noticed as well. We don't spend on trivial things now.
Mm,
We're smarter when we buy stuff, and we don't just
yes,
throw anything away. Uh,
absolutely.
Maybe as a parting message, what would you like to share with our viewers? It's like how do we maintain that mental wellness? And I don't like to really use the word mental toughness, because again,
Mhm,
that sounds like something stressful, no? Something that should be like a warm coal that emanates from within,
mhm.
permeates our lives, and affects others positively. What could we be doing?
Okay, I would start with really looking into yourself first. Have a self assessment or a self check and define your real purpose, why you're here in this world in the first place. Because it all starts from there, Dino. No matter how many things we try to do in a day, if we are not anchored to our main purpose, our divine purpose, then everything will just be meaningless. So I think that's the first thing. For us to be mentally well, we need to reconnect with our main purpose for our being. For why are we here? Why do we think God put us here in this world? And once we're able to identify that, then just try to design your own life. Really, right now is the best time to do it. When everybody's trying to reboot and restart their lives, this is the best time. When you have nothing, a clean sheet of paper, it's easier to draw a better picture rather than a cluttered one. I also would like to just share that taking a pause is very important as well. That we are not in a race in this world. We are just here to flow with God's plans for us. And every journey is different. Do not compare yourself to others because his or her journey is different from yours, and his or her purpose is different from yours. So if you're able to really embrace that, embrace the present, and not have to worry about the past, which makes you depressed, or have to worry about the future, which makes you anxious, just remain in the present and then you're grateful every day. So that would be my parting words, Dino. And I hope that all our viewers are going to be able to apply these nuggets of tips, nuggets of wisdom that I'm sharing, because, again, it is really my mission to not just share my own story, but also my little stories of being able to cope and overcome my own battles.
So Tinette, during the time that you said you were struggling through a bad marriage, and eventually you found yourself free from it. Um, what did you find yourself doing because of what you experienced?
So Dino, coming from a very abusive marriage, and as I've mentioned, I was really in a bad place, and I wanted to find my true north. I was praying to God to give me that sense of purpose, how I can, heal and how I can move forward from that very bad place. And I just realized that one of the things that I can do is to do something for the less privileged. So I actually left my corporate work, my corporate job, and then I started a salon business, a spa and salon business, um, hiring only domestically abused women from impoverished backgrounds. And the reason for this is I myself, who was domestically abused, was complaining a lot about my situation. But then looking at people who have the same situation, but from poor backgrounds and who didn't even finish elementary school, that put me in a position of, wanting to care for these women and giving them this kind of opportunity and seeing them earn income for their kids and finding them smiling again and finding their dignity back, winning their dignity back, that in itself was healing for me. So, and that business actually to this day is still around. It was bought from me by a very capable group of businessmen, but with the contract being following the advocacy of hiring only domestically abused women. So with that, there's always hope for everybody. There's hope for us to heal, and there's hope for, we don't know. Sometimes our pain in life can actually be our purpose. Sometimes we feel that, oh, I'm going through so much pain in life. But in reality, what happened to me was that helped me find my purpose. And to this day, everything that I do, whether in training, whether in coaching, it's really to help people find their true north, find their North Star again, and get their dignity back.
That is such a beautiful story that you've shared. It reminds me of what Khalil Gibran once said, that a pearl is a product of pain. An oyster is just an ordinary oyster until something enters the shell that causes it enormous pain. And the way the oyster deals with that is to wrap pearly substance on it. And the more it wraps it, the bigger it gets, the more painful it gets, until finally it opens up to the world, and a fisherman harvests the pearl, thereby relieving it of its pain. And so by creating that spa, you created something beautiful, and other people as well are now making their own pearls because of the pain that they went through.
Exactly.
And the fishermen, if I may use the analogy, are the businessmen who bought the business and continued it. So wonderful that God has used your life and the pain you went through to
Yes.
produce something of enormous beauty and of help to others who have gone through the same thing. Congratulations, that wonderful thing that you did.
Thank you very much, Dino.
Thank you so much, Tinette. And for our viewers, should you decide you want to reach out and communicate with Tinette, maybe especially the single mothers out there who take so much inspiration from our episode tonight, uh, where can they find you, Tinette? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on FB? How do they reach out to you?
Okay. Yes, Dino, I am on LinkedIn. So actually, my profile name on all the social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, it's just Tinette Cortes. So also feel free to visit our company website, ConsultAsia Global website. It's www.consultasiaglobal.com. And we have there our coaching programs, both for individuals and for groups. So I will be more than happy to, assist or to help those who will reach out, especially those who are going through challenges when it comes to mental wellness. I'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you so much, Tinette. And for our guest, I'd like to just invite you to uh, click like share, and subscribe. And I do hope that the content we're providing you every week is a source of encouragement and learning for you. And just so that you know what's coming up for our next episode, on episode 3 of season 5, we have a wonderful coincidence. Our very first guest during season 1, episode 1, was Roberto Obet Policarpio, former president of the People Management Association of the Philippines. So we come full circle because by next week will be our 1 year anniversary as a YouTube and Facebook show. And we are interviewing once more our very first guest. And the host for that particular interview would be Dinah Loomis, who is also one of our earliest hosts. And the topic will be called Pandemic, where leaders serve from the heart. But pandemic spelled as an acronym. So I'm sure Obit has a meaning for each letter of the word pandemic. So as ever, ladies and gentlemen, and to Tinette, thank you so much for
Thank you
staying
so
with us
much.
and
Thank you
watching
so
our
much.
show tonight. So I just like to remind everybody, learning is a never-ending journey with limitless vistas. Good night. Good night, Tinette.